Welcome back to Epic Exchanges, the podcast's YouTube channel. And it's been a while since we've had an interview because we were busy with the book launch and everything over the past month or so. But I am so pleased to welcome Julie Allen to the podcast. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Why don't you introduce yourself for everybody?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be on here. So, yes, my name is Julie Allen. I am the CEO at Mary Rose Northwest Boutique and the founder at the Mary Rose Foundation. Our boutique is size inclusive, body positive, and just promotes women empowering women and self love and all that good stuff. We're located in Oregon City, in the cute little historic downtown Oregon City. And then our foundation, the Mary Rose Foundation, is a 501c3 registered nonprofit that helps fund treatment for people suffering with eating disorders. So I myself had anorexia and bulimia for about 15 years growing up. So been in recovery for a decade and here we are.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here after we first met, and I was so drawn to you and your story and so many things that we had in common. So I would love to just start with you sharing that very story.
Yeah, thank you. So, growing up, I was a ballet dancer actually. I grew up in a small little town in the Pacific Northwest, and dancing was my life. I loved ballet dancing. And the thing about ballet, too, is the culture is very perfectionistic, right? Like, it's not only perfectionistic in how your body is supposed to look, but it goes into this whole deeper level of like, you're supposed to be perfect, right? Like, our feet are bleeding, doesn't matter. You suck it up and you put that smile on your face, and nobody knows the pain that you're in, right? So, that was kind of the underlying like theme the entire like forever, right? So I danced from the time I believe I started dancing when I was 4 or 5 years old. And so by the time I was 10 years old, I developed obsessive compulsive disorder, which is an anxiety disorder that consumed me. It's a brain disorder. Now, this was the early 1990s, and really nothing was known about OCD back then. But now they know that it's much more anxiety related. So I developed that when I was about 10 years old, and I couldn't stop washing my hands. I had intrusive thoughts that just would not go away. I thought something was wrong with me. I didn't know what was happening, right? And I remember telling my mom about it. She took me to the doctor, and early 1990s, nothing was done, nothing was known. It was a stage. They had no idea what was happening. It was very much brushed under the rug. My mom knew something was wrong, but the medical community said I was fine, right? I would outgrow it. I didn't outgrow it. And by the time I turned about 13 years old, the OCD was so bad, like the intrusive thoughts, like were terrifying me. And so I it's a weird thing. Like, I almost made the conscious decision, like, okay, if I focus on my weight, like if I put all these thoughts into focusing on what I'm eating and losing weight, then the other thoughts are going to go away. Like, this is my 13-year-old logic here. And so I decided that I was going to start really focusing on what I ate and really focus on losing weight. And that, honestly, it worked. Like, it, I hate to say it like that, but it did. It took those intrusive thoughts away, and I was happy about it, right? So that's when my journey with anorexia began, when I was 13, and it was really an offshoot of the obsessive compulsive disorder. But as with many unhealthy coping skills, it's very soon stopped working in the way that I intended it to work. And it all consumed me. It consumed me to the point where I was hospitalized multiple times. It just took over my life. So from the time I was 13, my entire mid teens, excuse me, my entire teens, I was in and out of the hospital, in and out of treatment, and I was no longer in control of the eating disorder. The eating disorder consumed me completely. I was so desperate and so lonely, and I just wanted that pain to stop, right?
Mhm.
So in and out of treatment, in and out of treatment. It was never my choice to go into the hospital. My parents forced me to go. They forced me to go into treatment. They saved my life, but it was never my choice, right? Like, I had no intention of giving up my eating disorder, because what would happen then? What would
Right.
happen if I stopped starving myself? the OCD would come back. And to me, that was the most terrifying thing. Like, you know, it was just terrifying. I could not have that happen, right? And so it just continued. My eating disorder just continued, and it continued to get worse. By the time I was in college, I started college when I was young. I started at 17 years old. I developed bulimia as well. So I started doing all sorts of behaviors. I was self injuring all the time. And I remember being in the college library, just a little community college, and just sitting there pretending to study. You know, I was trying my best, but my brain was starved. It's a really, it's, you know, your brain is like not there, right? And I remember sitting in that college library reading a book, and I just break down into tears. Like, I was so tired and so at my breaking point. Like, I could not do this anymore. And so what did I do? Went into the bathroom and, you know, did my behaviors, right? In order to make myself like stop feeling. And this is a little hard for me to talk about still, but it was all around that time. Like, I was raped as well, like all during this beginning of college time. So I was self-injuring, I was throwing up, I was starving myself, and then to top it all off, I was raped. And that was the breaking point. That rape really sent me from hating myself to a mad desire to eliminate myself completely. I had I hated myself to the deepest core. Like, it was my fault that I was raped, right? That I know that that's a very common thing that we think if that's an issue, and of course it wasn't. But it was my fault that I put myself in that situation. I wasn't strong enough to say no. You know, he thought I was joking. What, you know, all those things you say to yourself. And that was my breaking point. That was the point when I just totally went off the deep end and attempted suicide. I did not value my life at all. Like, I wanted out, and I was so desperate to stop that pain. And this continued for a couple years, again in and out of the hospital. Like, I was still underage at this time, under 18, and so my parents still, you know, could make me go to the hospital, right? Like, when I was too sick to whatever, I still got put in the hospital. But then I turned 18, and I was no longer I mean, it was no longer anyone else's choice but mine to go hospital, and I did not go to the hospital. So I continued these very poor behaviors, very out of control. I was incredibly out of control behaviors for the next couple years, until I had to make the choice to get better. And I was babysitting my nieces, excuse me, they're my cousins. They were very young. I was babysitting my cousins. They were just over 1 years old, and they're two little twin girls. And then my cousin, who has since passed away, but he was 3 at the time, and he was disabled, right? And I remember I was babysitting them. I had no business being in charge of little people, right? Like, I couldn't function. But again, you know, you're in that space, you don't really know. Um, and I remember going into the bathroom, locking myself in there for about 30 minutes with 2 1-year olds and a disabled 3-year old, and purging because, you know, God forbid I ate a piece of gum or whatever. And I looked in the mirror at myself, hearing Matthew bang on the door. And I remember just looking in that mirror, being completely disgusted with myself. Like, who, I did not recognize that person. And that was the first time where I knew that I had to change. Like, I could not keep going. I was putting myself in danger. Again, I didn't care about myself at this point, but I loved those kids. I love those kids more than anything. And to know that I was putting them in danger, like, that was my point. That was that point that I got to, that I said, I have got to make a change. And so about a month later, I checked myself into a residential treatment center out in Manitoba, Canada, of all places, because treatment in the States is god awful expensive. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, I checked myself in and I was there for about 3 years, or excuse me, 3 years. Oh God, no, 3 months.
Surgery, long time.
No, 3 months. And that's where I first started my recovery process, was there.
Wow, that's a lot. But you
Girl,
like, it shows so much of your strength and resiliency to even have that moment in the midst of your worst time, to be like, wait, this is bigger. This is not who I am. That person in the mirror is not who I want to be. It's not who I'm meant to be. And I deserve better for myself, really.
yeah. And at first I could not have any self-compassion towards myself, right? Like none, no self-compassion at all. And when I was in that treatment center out in Canada, the one of the therapists that I was working with, we were working on self-compassion. And I was like, no, I hate myself. I'm disgusted by everything that I've done. And she told me, she's like, okay, go back farther. Your present self. I was in my early 20s at this time. And she's like, okay, go back. How about when you were 18 and raped? Nope, totally my fault. Couldn't see that person with compassion either. Okay, let's go back farther. 13, when you started the eating disorder. Nope, no compassion for that girl either. Okay, let's go back farther. How about 10? When the OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, really started and I had no idea what was happening. Yeah, I felt compassion for that girl.
So you kind of mentioned when you were telling your story that you believe the OCD led to the eating disorder. What do you
Definitely.
think started the OCD?
Honestly, it's a brain thing. It really is. It's a total brain disorder. I still have OCD. Actually, it was triggered again after I had my kids. My oldest is 4 years old now, and after I had him, about a year after I had him, I had these thoughts. I was like, he had croup. Right, my baby got croup at 9 months, which is, it happens. But
Mhm.
I was like honestly convinced he was going to die. And I was talking to my husband, and it was like, that's not normal to think that. And so I still have OCD. I'm medicated now, and it's really just a brain disorder. And once I got on medication, like the correct medication for the OCD, light switch gone. Like
So
it
almost
was,
like a chemical
yep,
imbalance. So you need, yeah.
completely.
Okay.
Yep, it really is. And what, I'm not going to say what if, but in the early 90s, nothing was known about OCD. So we've come a long ways, and we've come a long ways.
Yes. Well, and mental health issues are starting to be more accepted, more talked about, more recognized,
Yes.
rather than hidden or swept under the rug.
Yeah, that's a huge part of our foundation, is to not only increase awareness of eating disorders and the horribly expensive treatment they are. First of all, they have the highest mortality rate of all mental illness. Up to 20% of people with anorexia die.
Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. And a lot but die by suicide too, which a lot of people don't know. But I mean, you're so desperate, like you are just all consumed, and it's like a monster living inside you, right? That you can't control. To backtrack a little, right? And also I want to decrease the stigmas associated with mental health, because there is no shame in
Yes.
having whatever. Like I am not shy about saying, yes, I take medication to manage my OCD. So
Well,
what?
and
Like,
there should be no shame in that, just like someone taking medication to manage high blood pressure
exactly.
or any other thing that is causing an issue with us enjoying and experiencing life the way we should.
Exactly.
So, if you don't mind, I'd love to go back and just talk about that time when you were living with and living in the midst of your eating disorder, and ask you, what does it like feel like when you're in the midst of that? What does your day look like?
Consumed. I was all consumed with doing anything that I could to not eat, to purge what I did eat, to exercise, to hurt myself in whatever way possible. Like it is an I don't know how I made it through school. Like in hindsight, I was in college for a lot of this time, and I have no idea how I made it through that. I don't remember. I honestly do not remember a huge portion of my teenage years, because my brain was so starved.
Mhm.
and I was just in and out of the hospital, in it like everywhere. And I don't remember a lot of it. But what I do remember is the feelings of complete self hatred. Like I was trapped and I couldn't get out. And the only way that I knew how to make myself kind of remotely feel better was to starve myself, was to engage in whatever behavior I was engaging in at that time.
And
At the,
was it more about punishing yourself for the like with the self-hatred, or was it about trying to get to a place that you thought then maybe you would love yourself? Or was it both?
loving myself was never in the picture at
Okay.
that. And it did evolve. It definitely evolved. I think when I was younger, it was more about, well, the OCD, right? Then it definitely evolved. Like I said, the rape was really that, like, if I were to pick a moment in time where it went from bad to off the charts bad, it was that moment. That's what really broke me, right? And just those feelings of self hatred, um, just off the charts at that point.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so now you talked about that turning point where
Mhm.
you realized that you couldn't continue to do this. You were threatening not just your own life, but the lives of those you loved, those
Yeah.
little ones.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the good part right
Mhm.
now. Let's talk
Yes.
about what it looks like now that you are in recovery. And I'm
Yeah.
saying that because I'm assuming that just like with alcoholics or any kind of addictive behavior, it's always recovery. You're never fully healed because
Right.
things can trigger
Mhm.
always, right?
Oh, yeah. Talk about 2020 has been, I mean, mm,
Right?
seriously. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. So I've been in recovery now for a decade. And
Congratulations, that's
thank,
awesome.
thank you. And honestly, I never thought I would be to this point that I am now. I'm married, I have two children, and I run a business that focuses on empowering women to love the bodies that they are in. And the foundation is my heart. Like on hard business days, the foundation keeps me going because, like, we fund treatment for people with eating disorders, and it is so expensive. So
Right.
expensive. My parents had to take out a second mortgage on their house to pay for my treatment. And that's not, it's ridiculous how expensive it is. And I had this thought when I was, in my early 20s, that I was going to someday pay my parents back for all that they did for me. And I had no idea that it would translate to into translate into a nonprofit that helps fund treatment for people suffering. So it's been a journey for sure, and it is definitely very up and down. And like you said, there's always triggers. 2020 was insane for everybody, I think. But I have kids now, and the business and the nonprofit and my children, they all keep me going. Like, it's no longer an option to go back.
Right. Well, and purpose does make all the difference. So along those lines, why is it important for you to share your story? Because you could have the foundation, you could have the shop, the boutique, you could have all of this and not actually dive into your story. So because that's being super vulnerable. And we talk about that a lot here on the podcast. So why
Yeah,
is it important to you to kind of risk that vulnerability and putting yourself out there?
yeah. There is so much strength in sharing your story, and it's very healing, and it inspires other people, I believe, to have the strength and courage to share their own. When you can share your story, it gives other people permission to do that too. And that is powerful.
I totally agree with you there.
Mhm.
As anybody who has listened to my podcast for at least the last year, they know that's totally what I believe and am practicing and trying to help other people share their stories.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you hope that people will learn from you sharing your story? How do you hope they'll feel?
My overarching mission with the boutique and with the foundation is hope. Like, no matter how difficult a situation is, no matter the place you are in right now, there is always hope. There's always hope. And I really want people to hear that. Like, no matter what is going on in your life right now, no matter what your past holds, like, that does not define you. There is hope. You can get out. You can get out of whatever situation that you're currently in, and you can live your life. Like, I do. And I never thought I would be here.
Well, I am so glad you're here. As I said, when we first connected several months ago, your story has touched me, and I'm so glad that you're here to share it with my audience and with more people as you get even more comfortable sharing it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Um, I just want to let all our listeners know, or viewers on YouTube, that we will post all the links to your boutique and to your foundation in the description on YouTube and in our social media posts so they can find you.
Yay.
And yeah, I'm just so thankful that you are here. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate it. It is very empowering to share your story, and there's a lot in that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow. Thank you, Julie.